Why does Japan have no army? And yet it's one of the world's most powerful military forces. Confused? Let's break it down. Branding, welcome to the introduction, where ideas come to life and the future unfolds. We all know Japan is a major world power, but we're willing to bet you didn't know that it has no official army. Its people, though, are some of the most enthusiastic supporters of their country's defense. So how does this work exactly? Well, after World War II, when the United States occupied Japan, they redid the country's constitution, including a pacifist version of Article 9, which basically says, no more war and no military force. This was partly to punish Japan for all the havoc it wreaked during World War II. They've got modern tanks, high-tech fighter jets, and a whole lot of well-trained soldiers. Also, they don't really do offense. Their doctrine is strictly defensive, which makes sense given that their one rule is to not start wars. And partly because the US wanted to make sure Japan would never, ever start another war. With China expanding its power and North Korea launching missiles everywhere, Japan feels like it's being surrounded by less than savory characters. But then the Cold War started, and Japan found itself in a bit of a pickle. Wait, are those actual terms? Yes, they are. This shift in policy was made possible by reinterpreting Article 9 to allow for more of a proactive stance. These bases have been a source of tension in Japanese politics, but they're also key to the US-Japan alliance, which dates back to World War II. Yeah, that makes sense. For example, Japan now says that defending its islands is, quote, necessary and legitimate, end quote. They're well-equipped, well-trained, and surprisingly agile. But their main strength is probably their tech game. It's a testament to the country's commitment to peace and its ability to adapt to changing circumstances. But can peace really be sustainable when your neighbors are basically a giant question mark? Well, only time will tell. Drones, cyber warfare, early warning satellites, you name it. And join us every week as we uncover the past, explain the present, and explore the future. Drop your topic ideas in the comments. We're listening. It's been taking part in more joint exercises with the U.S. military, including the mighty F-35 takeoffs from an aircraft carrier in the East China Sea. Impressive. These exercises help strengthen the bond between the two militaries and show their adversaries that attacking Japan would be like, really, really bad. It's also been active in UN missions around the world, like the peacekeeping missions in South Sudan and the Sinai Peninsula, although these missions aren't exactly peaky. Japan's contribution is mainly in the form of technology. Like they sent drones to help monitor the ceasefire in Gaza and provided cyber units to assist with UN communications. 85% approval rating by the Japanese public. That's higher than the Pope. And before you ask, yes, we did check if the Pope had an approval rating. He does. It's 82%. It needed some defense. But how could it defend itself without a military? They can't take offensive action or attack another nation, even if they're attacked first. But these limits are pretty vague and open to interpretation, which brings us to the question, why do they need to be so careful? The answer was to create a military that wasn't called a military. Boom, in 1954. The Japan Self-Defense Forces were born. Today, the JSDF is made up of the Ground Self-Defense Force, Maritime Self-Defense Force, and the Air Self-Defense Force. This isn't a bad thing, though, because Japan has one of the most powerful and popular militaries in the world. Now, back to Japan. While the public loves the JSDF, there are still legal limits on what they can do. Well, Japan's neighbors aren't exactly the best, most trustworthy bunch. We're looking at you, China. In response, Japan increased its military spending from around 1% of its GDP in the 90s to about 2% today. They also have a bunch of non-military jargon for their military, like collective self-defense and peaceful peacekeeping operations. So with all this newfound freedom, Japan has been flexing its military muscle. Speaking of the US, there are still 110,000 American troops based in Japan, more than any other country outside the US mainland. The US and Japan have a lot of joint military exercises together, like the annual Keen Sword drills that simulate an invasion of Japanese territory. But Japan's role isn't limited to its region. All this to say, Japan may not have an official army, but its defense forces are pretty legit. So in conclusion, Japan's army doesn't technically exist, but its power definitely does. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey, make sure to like, subscribe to the introduction.